Welcome to the Independent Artist Podcast, sponsored by the National Association of Independent Artists.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. I'm Will Armstrong, and I'm a mixed media artist.
I'm Douglas Sigworth, glassblower. Join our conversations with professional working artists.
Folks, it's podcast time once again. I'm back with the lovely and talented Douglas Sigworth. How are you, sir?
I am well. How are you?
I'm doing fine, man. A little stressed once again.
Okay.
Trying to come down the home stretch on a big commission, but I'll get through it.
Yeah, good.
You're bearded. I can tell you haven't had a show in a while.
Yep. I'm off the road, folks. And I'm working on studio equipment, so yeah, personal hygiene goes by the wayside in these situations.
Just watch the nostril hair, folks, and watch the ponytail. You're a bald man, sir, so you don't have to worry about that as much. You keep it clean and tight, but I used to joke that when I'd get salty and cranky about art shows, I'd say, my ponytail's starting to grow in. Old salt and pepper ponytail. You don't want to turn into an old crank.
Bitter old crank.
Bitter old cranks. That was the working title of the show for a few weeks anyway.
Well, I'm actually on cloud nine. I've been in such a bad mood all week because of working in the studio on this equipment. But I had my pre-op appointment today, and my surgery is full steam ahead. They signed off. I'm in good enough shape. I can go under the knife. Once this airs, it'll be the day after tomorrow.
Oh, my gosh.
We've been talking about this for a while. 9 months. I've been dealing with this for 9 freaking months, man.
Well, you've been dealing with it for a long time, and the listeners have been dealing with it as well.
Longer. They've been dealing with it longer.
Right? Yeah, man. No, it's. I hope everything goes well. I'm sure it will. I'm sure you're in good hands. Are you going into Madison, or where do you go for the surgery?
Nope, just right here in town, just in Woodbury.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Okay.
Well, this is kind of funny because I've been planning, as we know, and timing everything out, and I started to have this worry that I'm going to get to this appointment that's supposed to make sure that I'm not going to die in a surgery, sign off on my health and everything. And I go in and I'm thinking, what if there's something that puts a hold on it? What if I can't go ahead in the time now that I want to do it? And they take my blood pressure and it's freaking through the roof.
Okay.
They're like, do you have a little stress right now? And I'm like, yeah, a little bit. Yeah, a little bit. So they checked me again before I left and I was just fine. But yeah, I didn't know your blood pressure could drop 20 points in the matter of 5 minutes or 10 minutes or something.
Okay. All right. Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. That is a lot. Yeah, it's just a little stress here and there. Just a little bit. Yeah. I think you like it. Is that true? You like living with a little bit of stress?
I don't think I know any other way, honestly.
Yeah. I think we wind ourselves up, and I'm trying not to live with it, but good Lord.
Yeah.
I seem to catch myself right back in that cycle, that art show cycle once again. So,
well, you know what really gets the old adrenaline up with you, Will, is those big vehicles pulling into the sites. I think you have a story to tell us about that. Something about
you're
a big
setting
old
me up.
camper?
You're softballing me. Yeah, you're softballing me. I told you I had something I wanted to talk to you about before. It's like I feel like it's Bill Maher, like his new rules. I feel like here's a new rule for art shows.
Yeah,
if you can sleep in it. And I'm not talking about just like a lot of us get out there on the road and they've got the cot in the back of the van so that they can pull over and take a nap or save some money here and there. I'm not talking about these guys.
Okay.
I'm talking about if you can wash your dishes in it, Douglas. All right. If you can do dishes, if you can refrigerate your food, if it's, if you can live in it comfortably, if it's a residence, you got to wait. You got to fucking wait.
To pull into the site,
you got to wait. Yeah, to pull into the site. Yeah. You're last. If you can live in it, you're last. That's the give and take.
I thought it was first in, last out, though, with the big vehicles. No.
Get it. I don't even want to see it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see you and your residents pulling into the site. I was at Plaza a few weeks back. I was setting up. It was a weird kind of window. We knew there was a lot of rain for setup and it was going to be beautiful for the rest of the weekend.
Okay.
It's something about that kind of rain. You're not really that worried about it. Everybody's kind of low stress, but you're trying to get with it, trying to be a little snappy and get things set up. My neighbors across the way, glass artists, 2D glass artists, actually. So they were stained glass and they had everything up and hanging in their booth and everything was all set up and they had their awnings up. And a residence came down the road and took a tight turn.
Oh, no.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And it hung up on their RV and just started pulling everything.
And that
just
doesn't
pulling
sound
it
good.
all
When
apart.
that stuff
No, it was
comes
a nightmare.
down, it's
and
tink, tink, tink. Oh yeah.
And you've done a really good job editing the podcast. So when if I have a freak out over my I'm like, if I yell and I get into scary Will, angry Will,
I keep that from the public. I shield the public from that. Yes.
Right. That's the outtakes. You're not allowed to share those.
Nope.
But anyway, I was like, stop. And then they didn't stop. So I was like, well, I used my scare the bear voice.
Okay.
It's like you try to scare the bear off the trail voice. I was like, stop. I can't even do it.
You became very
it's
large
spike.
and your arms went up and
waving my arms. I was like, stop, and smacking my hand on and this poor woman, we've all made mistakes.
Sure, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We've all made we've done bonehead plays.
Yeah.
In the past, and we've all done it. I've done it, and I'll do it again. But good God, because all the other artists, they hear me yell from 2 blocks away, and they're like, "Oh, what's going on?"
Right.
Nothing's gonna
Gotta
rally
come
the
around.
troops.
Like big crowd starts to circle the wagons, and
it's nothing gravitates the crowd like that unless it's like free food for a bunch of artists.
Sure.
But it was pretty intense. So there for a minute, we stopped her before she started smashing glass. But there was definitely some tent damage. Yeah. Awning damage, stuff like that. But, nothing we can't figure out, right?
Yeah. So shows, I haven't been at one for a while. I don't even remember what it's like anymore. So
they're terrible.
Oh, my God. They just
really suck. Yeah, they're awful. I don't know why we do this.
I've been this whole studio thing, I opened Pandora's box. I'm like, okay, I'm going to fix my furnace. Well, in the process of fixing my furnace, I have to demolish my furnace. And on the one hand, it is exhilarating because, destroying stuff is fun, right?
Sure.
But then I kind of have to...
It occurs to me, actually, as you start, I don't mean to derail you, but it's like you're like a pregnant lady. You're like nesting. You're taking care of all this stuff and you're building the crib and you're doing all this stuff so that it's all prepared when the baby comes.
That's right. Well, and the baby is me. The baby is going to be me, everyone. So we all know that.
Douglas. We know.
So anyway, So, I was getting my stress anxiety out, taking this apart and big heavy stuff on chain hoist, slamming it together with sledgehammers and breaking it apart. But then there's that terrifying part, the realization, it's, shit, man, I got to build this thing back up again, So,
with a deadline.
It's crazy, but I've never built a furnace. I've repaired my furnace and I know how it all works, but building it from the ground up, from them sending me the components, it was kind of daunting and heavy. But I'm so grateful I had a support team. I had some of my old college buds from around here came and helped me out. And it wasn't just the muscle that was the thing. It was, you got all 4 or 5 of us, however many there were here. You've got this happened to me about 5 years ago, and have you ever considered doing it this way or that way? So we had all these little tidbits to make sure I was doing it right. It was good. No.
You liked that? Oh, that would have made me insane.
Well, I
hate advice. I hate advice.
If you had to build a glass-blowing furnace, which costs more than a frickin', Tesla, you'd take the advice. Because, for example, I got to the end of building it, and the whole chamber was shifted off about 2 inches. So that meant that when I went to slide the door to shut it, the stopper kept the door from shutting. And you can't just leave a 2,000-degree oven 2 inches open. So what are you going to do? I'm not going to tear the whole thing apart and rebuild it again. So got out the old saw and just start hacking away at part of the furnace so that I could shut the door. It's the whole problem solver thing that we do in this business. It's like you are standing up against a wall and you punch through the wall and you figure out how to solve the problem,
Yeah, that reminds me, earlier today, I was trying to open my yellow paint and I never use yellow.
Yeah.
So I had to open it. So with my,
was your pinky out when you did that?
No, I used my teeth. Okay. It was fine. It was not a pinky out situation.
Okay.
But no, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's not at all like opening my yellow paint.
So I just want to thank Fred Kemmer and Nolan Prohaska and Polly Cutt and Jim Engebretson. Your wisdom, your help, your muscle was extremely appreciated. So thank you so much, guys. Big shout out.
Yeah, it's incredible to have good friends when you need them. So glad you had help out there. What else do we have on the docket, sir?
What else do we have on the docket here? I have some cryptic notes from Will Armstrong, everyone. New show, new you. What does that mean, sir?
Oh, my God. This was hilarious.
Yeah.
So there's a little art show that happens in conjunction with a farmer's market down in Santa Fe, Rail Yard.
Okay.
And it actually attracts some really good artists. And my wife has been signed up to do them all summer long. And because we've been in Minnesota, she hasn't been doing any of them. So this past Saturday was her first one. And it's got some, like Allison Antleman, the art show artists will know her. Incredible jeweler out there on the circuit as well.
Love her work.
She is down the way, and her lovely husband, Eric, who I'm very fond of those guys.
Yeah.
But they were down the way. So, I mean, it attracts really good artists, but it's an art show. You set it up in the morning starting at, I think, 8 o'clock, and it runs till 2 p.m.
2.
That's it. One day show in your town, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Isn't 2 p.m. when things are like really supposed to be hopping, or is that
nope,
you're packing
that's when
it
the
up?
Farmer's market closes and everybody leaves.
Okay.
So it's funny, actually, it could close at 1. The 1 to 2 is just almost like old home week, and the artists walk around and kick each other's tires and play grab ass. So, I mean, it's just kind of a fun little neighborhood
grab
thing.
ass.
Nobody plays grab ass. All right. Anyway, just nauseating banter once again. All right. So my point being, and this is what cracks me up. I mean, I've been doing full-time art shows since 2002. Right?
Yeah.
So this is my 20-year anniversary.
Are you still a newbie?
Doing art shows. Well, yes, right? That's exactly my point. You're taking the punchline, but my God, we're like, they're like, you have to pull in from this side and pull out of this side and pull out, and it's like, there's so much experience between my wife and myself. I'm like, look, we got it.
Yeah,
There's
right.
no, I'm not going to break any rules. I'm not going to try to do anything wrong. I was like, you know what? All of this stuff with pulling in this direction and that direction, I can get a jewelry booth on one hand truck. I'll dolly it out. I'm putting it in my truck, which is empty, which typically can hold 3 booths. I'm like, I'm just going to throw it in there. We got yelled at.
Oh, boy.
We did. They were like, you're not allowed to walk across the street with this dolly and blah, blah. I'm like, it was so funny. I felt like it was my first art show all over again. So you're always a noob. Always a noob. You go to a new show and you're always a noob. You're the shiny little baby. And they thought I was just trying to get out of people's way, and they're like, he's trying to break the rules. These new artists trying to break. I'm like, I'm not trying to break the rules. I'm just trying to get out of the way. And nobody believed me. They just thought I was trying to get away with something.
Well, they knew you were the camper trying to drive down a narrow walkway.
I'm shifty-eyed, Douglas. That's what it is. I'm shifty-eyed.
Well, I was going to say about the new thing. Have you ever done, well, you're not a craft artist, so you haven't done this, but
I've been one.
Some of those craft shows, you show up at, like, let's say ACC or whatever, and let's say you haven't exhibited for 5 years or something, and you always get the I'm new sign, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then you have to explain to everybody who walks in your booth, well, I'm new to this show. I'm not like a new artist. So that's fun.
That's
good times.
Yeah, I don't know. You're always a noob.
Always
Douglas,
a noob.
The noob.
Yeah.
All right. I've got a high anxiety as well right now.
Okay.
Nothing is set, and I hate this time of year where nothing is set for 2023.
Yeah.
I've gotten into one show, and I'm not sure I can do it. Nothing on my calendar is set, and I just absolutely hate this time of year. So
I do too. I hate looking at the inbox and being like, okay, do we got a quick rush in and buy our booth, or is this a show we're going to actually be able to do? Like, for example, we got into the Grove, and I'd like to do the Grove, and I was holding out hope I could do the Grove. I won't be ready for the Grove. So I had to hold out until the last, till when they need to know for sure to put in my, I'm sorry, I can't do it kind of thing. So
sure.
I totally get you trying to guess what other puzzle pieces are going to fit into the schedule for the year.
Yeah, so you're doing 1 foot, but when is the first time you'll be able to get out and do something? Do you know?
Yeah, I don't know.
What do you?
I really don't.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll that's the whole thing. It's what can I commit to and when, and there's too many unknowns.
Yeah.
So
I'd like to get a director on here and ask them this question.
Sure.
When I feel like when I'm pulling out of a show, I always write like a little thing. I'm like, well, I'm so sorry, and I really hope to be able to exhibit there next year. And
my
it's
apologies,
just my circumstance and my calendar, and it's like. There was this thing that happened a while back where artists, they just wanted to get an email that there's so much anxiety with the show. It's like, the title of the email, it's like a lot of these shows will bury the lead. I wonder if shows feel the same way we do, whether they just be like, withdraw, just a title, like no nicety, just be like, withdraw.
Forget it. It's the same.
I'm out.
It's the same deal. I mean, artists would complain if it's too long and verbose, or or if it's too succinct and to the point. It's like they rejected me in too cold and callous of a way. I mean, really, honestly, by now, I really don't care if you're in or you're out. Is the heading, and boom, move on.
Please, there's a thing online about that whole. Please fuck off. It's just like
PFO, right? Or
PFO. Please, I got my PFO. It's please fuck off. Please don't email me back. Don't ask for your scores. What are you going to do with your scores, by the way? What are you doing? Do you give a shit?
It's like throwing a freaking dart at a board. I mean, okay, so this particular jury scored me this way. Next particular jury might score me that way. It's like...
I deuced the carpet. It's time to rub my own nose in it. I just like grab myself by the back of the hair and just wallow in my own shame and my misery. I don't need it.
That's a pretty colorful image.
Well, that's how I feel. I don't want it. I don't want my scores. We were talking a long time ago, and I may have brought this up on the podcast before, but I've always thought it was fun if it seems like all the shows come out around the same time. It would be nice if they do like a Zap conference right around that too, and just have a big bar room filled with, it's like an awards show.
Okay.
It's like, here are our people. And then you've got like the losers lounge on the other side of there. It's like, you go hang out in the losers lounge, or you go up to your room, you're like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, hey, I was on social media this week. Our friend Evan Reinheimer does his YouTube show.
Oh, yeah.
And he had a really interesting video. He had brought something up that I found really interesting, and that was a neighbor of his, when they asked about his art fair van, they said, "That's for your art?" And he said, "Yeah, that's what I traveled art shows." And they said, "Well, that must make you a really successful artist then." And so he went into the whole concept of, what makes us a successful artist? What is a successful artist?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've got my own criteria on what I think.
Yeah, what is it?
We were talking about shows, and you were talking about having a couple of really great ones. And I kind of, for me, I look at it as being able to hit those averages. I kind of have this average of how well I should be doing. Mm-hmm. And then I want to hit that average. And I said this last show too, whereas I want to have the confidence that I'll reasonably be able to put a good show season together.
Right.
And hit those,
So at the end of the day, it does come down to the financial stability or the financial sustainability of what you're creating.
It's only money.
It's all money. Yeah.
It's all, as far as like successful artists and things like that. It's all money based.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not totally money based, because I could go sell hot dogs.
Sure.
I could go set up a crab cake booth, and I'd want to kill myself by the end of week 2.
Yeah.
Or actually by the end of Saturday. I don't want to make any crab cakes.
Well, so then the component of making what we want to make, saying what we want to say, and having it be well received, and people throwing cash our way, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's it, right? That's the big piece of the pie.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to pay my bills doing what I want to do.
Well, the reason I bring it up...
talk to reasonably few chuckleheads.
Well, the reason I bring it up is in this talk I had with Oliver Schnoor this week. He's been an entrepreneur. He's done just what you said about the whole, I could go sell crab cakes or hot dogs or whatever. He didn't do that. He had a successful business where he made the money, but he didn't have that internal fulfillment. And it was when he got into this jewelry business and he was making his work and having it be well received and having it be self-sustaining. That for him was like the pinnacle. And that was when he felt on top.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm glad Oliver still talks to me. You know, sometimes we have those shows where you are the hot thing.
Uh-huh.
And I had one of those in Chicago one year, the first time that I'd met Oliver.
Okay.
And he was just having an okay show right across the street, but they had a front row seat to one of those shows where I just was crushing it. I feel like you're selling like something major like every 20 minutes. You're like, oh, here's another painting. Yeah. And he was like...
I've had that too, where you look over and the sour look, not of I hate you, but the look of disappointment that it's not going well on the other side of the street, you know?
You're being kind. I think he hated me.
There
was another one. Yeah. No, I doubt it too. We try to be happy for each other, but sometimes you're just like, I don't know. There was this one, I remember doing Dogwood for the first time, and this lady next to me, I haven't seen her since, but she was selling something, I don't know, a ceramic fish. You know, but she was just hand over fist with these ceramic fish, just all the stuff. And I was having a pretty decent weekend, and I like seeing that, seeing somebody else. I'm like, I love going to a show and realizing that, you know, there's an audience for what I have. There's an audience for what she brought. There's an audience for this. And then this guy comes over to I can't remember the guy's name. Well, I'm just getting ready to say something shitty, so I don't need to call him up.
You don't need to point it out.
Yeah, he's like, how about you and me grab this booth and just throw it into the river?
Because he didn't like that.
Because he didn't like her selling so many fish. I'm like, how much, buddy?
How does it affect him?
Yeah, the fish market isn't cutting into whatever you got.
Right.
You know? Just let her peddle her stuff.
So,
it doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
There's enough for all of us.
There is room. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
she's moving a bunch of fish.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into Oliver. You set it up, and then I digressed once again. But let's get right into the right into the show.
Well, the thing I wanted to kind of say to lead into it is, you know, he finds this career fulfillment with his jewelry, and then to have a severe trauma happen, and then to overcome that and come back stronger than before. So I'm really excited for everyone to hear what he has to say about his journey.
Me too.
All right, here is Oliver Schnoor from Naples, Florida. This episode of the Independent Artist Podcast is brought to you by Zap, the digital application service where artists and art festivals connect.
You know, Doug, I was sitting down and talking with my wife yesterday. She had just come in from her studio and she was complaining. One of the big shows, they decided to do a do-it-yourself, reinvent the wheel application.
Hate that so much.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, it's like typically an application that would take you 2 minutes on Zap. All of a sudden, it's going to take you an hour and a half to reformat all of your images to their specifications. It just made me think about how easy applying with Zap is.
You just click a few buttons, you've got your 1920s all formatted, and you are good to go.
Exactly. So I personally appreciate what Zap is doing, and thanks for not making us reinvent the wheel every single week like we used to have to do.
All right, well, we are here with my good friend Oliver from Oliver Jewelry in Naples, Florida. How are you, my friend?
Very well. Thank you for asking. And I hear you are awake too. This is early morning hours for the two of us.
We are doing the early bird session here, so we've got our coffee and we're going to have a little coffee talk.
Looking forward to it.
Well, I want to start by saying a big congratulations. Last month was a big, exciting event for you and Oliver Jewelry.
You could say that.
You won Best in Show at a top show at the St. Louis Art Fair in Clayton, Missouri.
It was definitely unexpected. It was a big honor. I'm still nurturing off of it, and I think I'm going to enjoy the whole situation for years to come. It was actually something very special for me.
Well, I would agree it's unexpected, not because of the quality of your work, because you do produce top-notch work.
Thank you.
But what's unusual is how often do we ever see a jeweler take home the top prize at a top show like that?
It doesn't happen very often. To be quite honest, any award at that show would have been just fine with me. You were invited next year, it would have been perfectly good.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, the whole celebration took place in a big conference room with, hundreds of artists there. And one by one, those awards get read off, and I'm just sitting there wondering, when are they going to call me? They were gearing up to the highest award, and I'm just still sitting there and wondering if they forgot me or if this is a prank or anything.
So if I'm understanding you right, you were given the personal invite, come to the ceremony. There, you might have an award coming, and
that is how St. Louis does it.
Okay.
They inform you that you won an award. They hang a flag that says award winner, and then they invite you to the artist break breakfast, which, by the way, is awesome.
Okay.
And so you have no idea what you won. You only know that you will be awarded or honored in some sort of way. And then basically all the artists are there. And as you can imagine, if there's free breakfast, there's a whole bunch of us. Like I said, I mean, they have lots of rewards. I think maybe around 25 or something like that.
Well, I want to speak to the mindset. I mean, I think we can all relate to it's like they probably passed the best in jewelry category, and then, they keep moving on, and you're thinking to yourself, wait, maybe they forgot me. Maybe this is a mistake, never considering it was the top prize about to come your way.
And that's exactly what was going through my mind. I did not expect that Best in Show would be even a consideration, even though, I mean, don't get me wrong, I like my work. I think it deserves recognition. But at the St. Louis Art Fair, it's that much more special to have the very, very best artists there. And I think every artist that really shows at the show deserves an award, because it's the best of the best. It's the quality of work is just amazing. And to be recognized best of show at that level of artistry, and it was just amazing. I'm still speechless now thinking about it. It's pretty great.
But there's more to it than just being recognized. I mean, it's almost like the past, I can't remember when this happened, but you were at your lowest of lows about 3 years ago when you had the accident. And then this is almost like coming back from that as being better than before.
That is right. That's kind of the curveball life throws at you, and going through. So I had that injury in 2019.
I mean, I'd say even more than just an injury. We think of like pulling a muscle as an injury. I mean, you had a very traumatic experience. Would you be interested in talking about that?
Sure. I mean, like I told you earlier, I actually had sleepless nights preparing for this interview that we were planning to do, thinking about the whole situation, trying to figure out how I'm going to word it. It made me live through this whole incident, or this whole ordeal, I should say. Incident sounds like a short period of time, but it really, it's still affecting me today. And that kind of gave me sleepless nights.
Sure.
I can talk about it, and I think it's good for me. It's something that's part of me now, so I don't hide it. I don't have a problem with sharing it with other people. If you want to talk about it and share that with our artist community, I'm fine with that.
Well, I remember back when this happened, and I reached out right away, and you were talking about the injury. You were talking about what happened with the saw. You said as jewelers, you kind of have to do makeshift tools, and this was a situation that just went bad. Can you tell us what happened?
I mean, that's basically how it worked. It was a beautiful morning, May 3rd, 2019. Absolutely gorgeous day, and I was motivated to get things done. I think we just came back from a Texas stretch of shows, very successful shows, had great events lined up for the rest of the year. We're kind of eager to make new and exciting work. I do work that sometimes requires specialty tools that are not sold over the counter or that you can't buy. So I buy existing tools, kind of modify them to my needs.
Right.
And this was a wooden Dremel that you use for cuff making.
Oh, okay.
I misused a shop saw as a table saw. Somehow the piece of wood got clogged in or got stuck in the saw and rolled my hand into the blade, which resulted in I almost cutting off my hand. So I
remember seeing the images. It was like the saw blade was it between the pointer finger and the middle finger, or through the thumb and the pointer finger, into the center of your hand?
Yes, it actually came right across, starting at the knuckle of my index finger and ended up about at the other side of the hand at the bottom. So basically I cut the bones of my index finger, middle finger, and ring finger. All the tendons and muscles that are associated with that functionality also got severed.
And this was a table saw, you said, or a circular saw?
There was like a chop saw. So basically, you're only supposed to cut through things with it. It has a cover on it, all those kind of things. I misused the saw, took the cover off, and kind of used it as a table saw. So, I am to blame for the incident, and that's a whole different story. But it was stupidity on my part. And at the time when it happened, I never had pain, really. I was probably under shock, but the whole situation was never really painful, even, in the hospital thereafter and things like that. It was more a mental challenge. I really had difficulty at that point I thought, my life is over. It's never going to, that's the wrong way of saying it. It's never going to be the same.
Well, no, I mean, you immediately, it hit you right off the bat that this was a life-changing event, that this was was not just like a little injury. This was life-changing.
It was. I mean, just looking at the traumatic injury that I had, you realize this is not just a cut. There is something major going wrong. And I wasn't really aware of the extent of it at the time. It was just bleeding profusely. I know there was major damage, but I didn't know that the surgery had to be as comprehensive and that the recovery would have be so hard and long term.
I can relate to the shock you're talking about, because on a much more minor scale, there was a time years ago where I tore a hamstring, and the sound of that muscle ripping was like basically like somebody just took a pair of jeans and just ripped them apart. And that's like actually what I thought had happened, except for the fact that my leg wouldn't move. And there was that weird kind of shock that you go through, like, what's going on? Why can't I physically move? I'm sure like looking at the hand with the saw blade in it going, this is bad. This is really bad. So what did you do? What did you do right after the injury happened?
Christiane, my wife, was upstairs, and I don't know if she already heard by me possibly screaming or making unusual noises that there's something not right. But all I remember is looking at the hand and then wanting it to be fixed right away. That was kind of stuck in my head later on too. I wanted this to be patched up again and functional again. That was kind of the immediate thought.
You're like, I don't have time for this. I've got shows coming up. I've got plans. So suddenly all of that gets pushed to the wayside, and you have to like deal with reality.
Yeah. I mean, I think those thoughts sunk in a lot later. I mean, of course, life-changing, I was aware of that, but kind of how it's going to affect my life and what I might be doing or not be doing, those things kind of sink in later. So my first reaction was run up, blood everywhere. Telling Christiane, call 911, call 911, I need an ambulance. And we live very close to a hospital here, which is kind of good, but it turns out that I needed to be transferred to Bradenton, which is about 2.5 hours north from here. So they picked me up.
Just because locally they didn't have the ability to manage what injury you had?
Yeah, I think that this is like microsurgery, and there is doctors, physicians that specialize in dealing with something like this. And none of the hospitals had personnel and staff that is experienced enough to deal with the injury that I had. A little hazy, kind of what happened.
Right. Well, of course, yeah.
Basically, so they took an initial look at it. Once they realized, well, we can't handle this situation here, they kind of called around to the state to see if there is anybody or any hospital that could help me. And they found one in Miami or South Miami and one in Bradenton, and I ended up in Bradenton. Not that was up to my choice, but that's kind of how it happened.
That's where they sent you, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Correct, yeah. So then, in a specialty transport ambulance, they kind of drove me up there, put me in the ER there, and then I was just sitting there, and same thing that I said earlier. It was like, why does nobody come and see me? I want this fixed up. I want this to be patched up again.
Like it wasn't going fast enough. You're like trying to this is an emergency. Why isn't anybody helping me as quickly as they should?
Yeah. So at the time, of course, this is the first time ever that I had something broken or a major cut or anything. So I have no hospital experience whatsoever.
So you just went full on with that one.
Correct. Then. Yeah. So yeah. If I do it, I do something right.
God.
Yeah, I know. So basically, I ended up sitting there or being in that hospital before I got into surgery for 4 days. They actually said that the swelling and the injury needs to kind of subside, or the swelling, for a successful surgery to take place. And I never saw really, or at least I'm not aware that the actual operating physician looked at me until the day before. Just briefly came in, looked at the injury and said, he's ready now.
Okay.
I think the surgery took like 6 or 7 hours. Later, I was kind of patched up with a whole bunch of pins in my hand and things like that.
Right.
But funny thing is, it's not funny, but
ironic.
I mean, the whole time while I was sitting there in that hospital room, like I said, I really had no pain, but every 3 to 4 hours, nurses would come by and check your blood pressure and your oxygen level and all those kind of things. And one of the questions they would ask is, so how's your pain level from 0 to 5 or whatever? And even though I had no pain, I didn't want to confront the reality and deal with the situation. So I always said my pain level is 5.
Oh.
I needed this, just to be subdued in some way, not to
not to have a panic attack or
right.
not to just go down that deep spiral. You needed to kind of keep it all together.
It's so weird that the physical injury is one thing, but your mind is such a powerful part of you that I think I had more problems dealing with it up here in my head rather than the actual physical injury for at that period of time. At least that's kind of what went through me.
That makes a lot of sense. The episode that was released last was with Anthony Hansen.
Yeah.
And Will and Anthony talk about the chronic pain Anthony went through. And Will had also a ruptured Achilles, and he talked about something that I hadn't experienced before, I hadn't heard before. And that was this feeling of feeling kind of claustrophobic in his own body, like the injury is in his leg and he's feeling like I can't escape this. I can't take a break from it. It's right there. Is that what you're describing? That kind of like needing to mentally check out?
That's the best way of putting it, that mentally checking out. If I would have been at that time thinking about all the repercussions and problems and recovery and all those things that are involved after the fact, I probably would have gone nuts. I think that, just being in a state where your mind isn't working at 100%, at least that helped me. I think that's the same thing that the body does initially when you have something like this. It puts you in like a shock mode, which, probably at least has that, what's it called, that flight mechanism.
Right, the adrenaline response, the fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah, correct. So where, your mind is still working, at least at some level, but other things are blocked out, and pain is probably one of it. And so I needed to stay in that state for a little bit longer because it was just so traumatic. But that was only the first couple of days. So once I got through the surgery, I was let go there. I mean, you only stay up to the surgery, and then the surgery was done. I think I stayed one night for observation, and then Christiana picked me up when we drove home.
And then you're kind of like on your own to kind of deal with what's next, right?
Totally. I mean, they give you a little, introduction in what needs to be done. So one thing is, of course, your hand needs to be above your head at all times. So I kind of always looked like this very eager school kid with my hand up. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing I know about the two of you and Christiana, is you guys are very you're meticulous, and it's okay, if this is what I need to do to have the best possible outcome, I'm going to do that. I'm going to fully commit. And I'm going to also research all this other stuff that kind of can get me what I need to do. I mean, I can really see that you were trying to take control of the situation at some point and try and fix this problem.
I definitely wanted to have the best outcome possible. And
I mean, who wouldn't, of course, but yeah.
But the interesting part of it is going into this, the surgeon at one point told me that his surgery was about 70% of the healing process, and my physical recovery and all that kind of thing would be 30% to not 100%, but at least to functionality again. And at the time I thought, wow, that's a lot.
Okay.
Now I almost think it's the other way around. It took me 70% of hard work, and, the surgery was 6-7 hours long. So, where does his 70% come from?
Okay.
So the road to me actually being able to use my hand again was a lot harder than I anticipated. It takes so much more discipline than I ever had before. It takes so much more time and, just the willingness. There's a lot of times where I could have just given up, but I think that the outcome would have been not satisfactory for me.
You didn't accept that you were now unable to work with your hands.
Yeah.
You made the decision that you were going to push through that and keep working it.
Totally. I mean, so for the first 6 months after it, I couldn't really move the hand. So I still had the pins in there. The whole hand everything needed to be kind of calmed down again, settle. The swelling needs to be going down. So there wasn't much physical therapy that I could have done initially. And, all you do is kind of, run around with your hand up. And I had those cubes. It's like a blue foam cube that has several holes in it that I can stick my hand in. And that way I can sleep with my hand over my heart. So, this blue foam cube kind of became my buddy. Yeah. And so for the first let's say 2 or 3 months, there was really nothing I could do other than cleaning the wound and just giving it a rest.
So in that early period when you couldn't really physically do anything to start on your recovery, I mean, how did you manage your mental health during that period? What did you do to kind of...
Well, there were dark times. Trust me.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So at that point, it was really, I needed to deal with the situation. I needed to kind of maybe come to conclusion or to realize that my life won't be the same, that I might not be making jewelry again. I mean, I started kind of try to write with my left hand, and I know that the body is pretty amazing and it can adjust to a lot of things. Yeah. And my injury is probably, compared to other people's problems, just minute, but it affected my life. I'm a hand crafter, and not having your hands is kind of a difficult thing.
Well, and I've known you for a long time, and we've talked about the fact that you've had a history, a background of being an entrepreneur and doing lots of other projects and just always kind of being a real business-minded person. But since you've been working as a fine craftsperson in jewelry, this was like the pinnacle. This was like you had arrived at where you wanted to be, what you wanted to do. This was like fully realized. And then to kind of have that threatened had to just really mess with you.
It's interesting that you bring that up. But what I do now and what I've done to that point, as far as jewelry, being part of the artist community, having that business model of selling your work on art shows, has been the most fulfilling thing in my life. Being an entrepreneur or trying to create a business in the past always was just about making money. So I was chasing a goal. I was never enjoying the journey. And the switch really came in my mind. For one, my wife is responsible for it. But secondly, the fulfillment that I got out of what I do now, making jewelry, seeing the customers that enjoy the work, being part of this family is something where I realized, I enjoy the journey. I enjoy every day. I'm not chasing a goal.
You're not getting up every day and going to work out of some necessity to pay your bills. You're getting up to kind of fulfill your dream and your passion.
Totally fulfilled. I mean, I make a good living with what we are doing and I enjoy it. So it can't be better. And the rug was kind of pulled underneath my feet when that injury happened. I was afraid that might go away.
Right.
Roller coaster ride. I mean, within that time, I had highs too, and I had the lowest lows that I probably ever went through. I think it changed my character. I'm a different person now than I was before.
How so?
Much more disciplined. I mean, the whole idea of having to exercise your hand. I did it several hours a day, and just trying to grab on to your life as it was makes you different. It gives you a different mindset. Appreciation, humbling too. I mean, there's so many aspects that I took for granted initially, and now
like how quickly things can change. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's not a given that everything is just going to stay at the state that it's at,
That's extremely scary. I mean, seriously, an incident that takes less than a second can change your life forever. And that realization is pretty stunning. But it can happen to anybody, and it does all the time, all over the world. So
this is kind of a sensitive topic, and I know one of the things that when I first talked to you after it happened, and it left me feeling a little helpless, is that idea of blame. I mean, something that happens in a second, and I remember you saying, I totally caused this for myself, and feeling responsible and kind of getting over the shame of causing it. I mean, was that part of the mental part of it for you? It was
more stupidity. I'm the person that not necessarily feels blame for the actions that I do. I think I behave pretty well towards others and towards myself. So blame is probably not the right word.
I just remember feeling like, I wish I could lift that burden from you, which I'm sure it's a normal burden for all of us.
I think for myself, I just felt stupid, to even attempt this. Before that, like I said, I've never had an injury or anything that had me end up in the hospital. And I felt invincible. I never thought that could happen to me. And, by not being careful or overly confident, to cause something like this just ended up in me being disappointed in my decision making. It was super stupid. So it's not going to happen again.
Well, how did you lean on others to kind of get through that? Like what kind of support system did you have?
I mean, my wife is great. Without her, I
I'm going to go on record to say she is.
Yeah,
She's amazing.
Yeah. So without her, there would have a lot of things in my life wouldn't be as smooth running and as good and as nice and as fulfilling and warm as they are. So, and this was no different. So she really gave me everything that I needed in order to recover. And that is, like you said, initially the research of what this whole injury involves and everything that can be done, can be purchased, can be consulted.
Anti-inflammatory vitamins or anything like that. She was on the ball with it.
Having that is, of course, really, really nice. And our neighbors here are great too. So, I got flowers and soup. People came out of the woods that I usually don't interact with that much and showed their concern. That was really nice. So this is just in our area here. But beyond that, you reached out right away. Of course, my family was in a shock, but there were so many friends in the artist community that contacted me and expressed their concerns and were hoping that I heal up really quick. Again, another one thing that I take for granted that I really never see, like everybody, but I never thought that they, think about me. They take the time to contact me and let me know that they hope that everything is going to be good. It's very special.
It's a strange business we're in. We kind of take for granted those relationships on the road. We know, we're going to be in this city next month and we're going to see 200 of our closest friends. But maybe the day-to-day we're not interacting as much, but we just know that friendship exists and it's going to be there when we show up there. So for it to kind of exist in your own life after this happens and people reach out to you, it's got to feel overwhelming.
Totally.
And touching.
That kind of one thing that, of course, is involved in this injury is, hopefully you have good health insurance and, hopefully you have a way to pay for it because those bills were pretty high. And there is a lot of therapy and things that I needed to have. And those are not necessarily covered by any insurance. So we did like a crowdfunding or like GoFundMe or whatever it's called.
Right.
And we actually had so many people contributing to my medical bills that despite of the well wishes, people actually went
ponied up financial support.
And that was another very humbling realization that people go out of their way to help another artist, another family member. That was great. And it certainly did help. I took a lot of physical therapy. It certainly, that aided me in my recovery quite a bit.
Well, the outpouring of love is that empathy, is that knowing that people care. Okay. But that also, the GoFundMe that helped with the bills, it had to take at least of all the stresses you've got dealing with, it can help lessen the stress of that financial burden so you can focus just like on what is important, which is healing and getting better.
It does. It was very, very amazing that people went out of their way and they have no idea how much it helped me.
That's
being
cool.
thought of is kind of like kiss on the head. People think about you. It helps you. It gives you strength. It gives you motivation. It's a very powerful gesture that helped me.
Wow. So once you were able to start physically doing the exercises and after surgery and when you could actually start doing stuff, how did that change things for you?
To the positive, the thing is, once you realize, well, there is improvement and it was the minutest things. Just being able to kind of wiggle your finger a few millimeters was progress for me, and it kind of gave me frustration on one end because it took so long, but hope on the other because I saw that I can control my fingers again and weren't completely stiff.
You could start measuring some benchmarks and noting progress.
The physical therapy, like I said, where I went to here in the United States actually helped quite a bit. But I went to Europe to visit family.
Because you have dual citizenship. You're originally from Germany.
From Germany,
right?
That's right, yeah. And my parents at the time lived in Spain, and so do my in-laws. Okay. So we went to Spain, and I saw a physical therapist there that... Talking about pain, I said I never had pain until that day. That guy stretched my hand like you wouldn't believe it. It's totally incredible. And he pushed me to the limit where I thought, he's going to break something. He's going to pull a tendon or break a bone. And I thought, what is he doing? But I needed that. So that guy really showed me the limits. All the things that I had here was like picking up cards or,
fine motor skills kind of thing.
That didn't really tell me where I need to push myself in order to really improve or go to the limit. So Harald Neuden is his name, big shout out.
Okay.
That guy changed my recovery process.
Well, was there an aspect of, so you're doing all the fine motor skills from your physical therapy in the US. Is there a little bit of like, you've gone through this trauma, it's like you feel broken. He kind of manhandles it and moves your hand around where you're thinking, I can actually be that rough with it and I'm not going to break myself again?
That's exactly it. You are so careful with it because you don't want to re-injure it or do anything like that, that you yourself would never push it that far. So having somebody that has the understanding of what is possible and at what healing stage you are and showing you exactly where you need to take this if you want extreme recovery, then, that needs to be done. I myself would have never done this. Having him actually show me the ropes was really helpful. And after that, I took it to another extreme. And I think from that point on, the recovery really, really took off. I mean, now I'm actually able to do everything that I was able to do before. The hand doesn't look as pretty anymore.
But, well, you're not modeling your jewelry with your hand there, Oliver, so it doesn't need to be pretty.
I always wanted to, but hey, it's too late. And so there are limitations, but they are more aesthetically rather than functionality wise. So I picked up playing the guitar, finger picking guitar, because I always thought, okay, you have the isolation of each finger where you need to put pressure on each finger individually. That helped me tremendously too. So Harald Neuden with the physical therapy and playing guitar really changed my trajectory as far as recovery is concerned.
Well, I'm sure the guitar was a twofold thing. Obviously, it's the physical fine motor skills, but then you just can connect to the music and relieve some of that pent-up stress and just create.
Totally. It's a great instrument that, like you said, and it's not just a physical exercise, but it helps you relax and soothe and just enjoy yourself, what you create.
Then you were like, kind of coming back from it. I mean, you were to a point where you could make jewelry again and you were ready to kind of resume that life that had been taken away from you. And then you get that 1-2 punch. Then we have COVID happen. So it's just like, it seems like in your recovery, maybe on the one hand, you were making great physical strides, but it's like the universe was not playing along for you.
It certainly wasn't. My injury was something that was in my microcosmos. That was me, and nobody was really affected by it other than my close family. But you're right. I mean, I'm actually at the point where I thought there's light at the end of the tunnel. I can make it. Life hasn't been rearranged to a point where I can't make jewelry anymore. And I was really, really excited and happy and motivated. I had a great show schedule ahead. And just like you said, then all of a sudden we have COVID enter our lives, which changed it for so many of us. Yeah, and the whole mental roller coaster started all over again. So the same thing went through my mind, only that it was a little bit different level, where our business model is not going to work anymore. People won't buy jewelry. Art shows won't be there anymore. It was so difficult to overcome one hurdle only to stand in front of a wall.
And what seemed like an even bigger hurdle. And I don't think we should forget the fact that we didn't know what the outcome was going to be with this virus. In the middle of it, it felt like, you're right. Is this industry now dead? Is this doing things in person? Is this a thing of the past? Are we going to have to recreate how we make a living or how we express ourselves?
I certainly did think that way. Like, I think so many of us, especially in our medium, jewelry, I was always thinking, okay, people wearing masks, how are they going to judge their aesthetic with the face covering when they try on earrings or a necklace? If you sell 2D work or wall hangings or sculptures, it's not as personal, yes, as jewelry is. So especially for my medium, I was very concerned that it might have negative effects.
Definitely. Wow, I didn't think of it like that. Definitely.
It's interesting how you have so many situations that tell you, or that try to tell you one thing, and then we talked about it in our kind of prelude when we preparing for this. And then I end up winning an award that means so much to me. I have such a successful year. If it would be up to me, pessimism would survive probably or win, because I thought, this is not going to end well. And life proved me wrong. It ended up better than I could expect. And that's not just financially, that's me personally. And everything in my life actually turned out to be good. I mean, I don't like COVID and I don't like what it does to us, but it didn't end my life. So that's good.
I have to say, with what I'm going through with my ankle, it is hard to feel like there's better days ahead, that this isn't just like, this is the new normal, or, oh, now I can't do what I would want to do. So to have that realization that you could come back from something as severe and traumatic as that, and just on top of the world, basically.
I mean, I feel for you, and I'm sorry what you're going through and, have ahead of you. But yes, keep in mind that you are in control and you can change your future. And if you work hard on recovery and those kind of things, there will be improvement and life goes on. Well, we are very resilient. If you don't give up, you will come out better in the end. At least that's my experience. And I had many hurdles in the past.
Well, we've talked about Christiana Hampel, your wife, how she has been your rock. And you guys have this really great relationship. And, just getting to know you over the years, it's really interesting that, I don't know if everybody knows this, but when you met her, she's the jeweler. She was the jeweler in Germany who kind of taught you everything you know, right?
Absolutely right. Yeah, she pulled me out of this hunt, this chase of financial success and put me on the path of daily fulfillment that I feel now. Yes, when we met, I had actually a sign business. I did graphic design and signage for the housing market here in South Florida. I liked the whole jewelry idea. We did few small shows here and there in the local area.
And was that selling her work, or was this work?
Yeah, I was tent monkey at the time. So, it's responsible of setting everything up. And then, she did her thing. And I kind of enjoyed it. I've been to art shows before prior to that, but I've never sat on the other side, so to speak. Right. So I kind of enjoyed the process. And in 2007, 2008, or somewhere around there, when that housing market completely crashed, most of my customers went away. They filed for bankruptcy or they downscaled, and my business was kind of at a standstill.
No one needed signs back then?
Correct. Well, I was not motivated to chase the small accounts because I really established a well-run business at the time, and I didn't want to start from scratch again. And so we kind of thought, how about we try jewelry full-time? And it was a rocky road. I mean, initially, we didn't make much money with it. We can hardly pay the bills. It, of course, meant that I needed to delve more into the whole process, not just from the business side of views, so selling the work, but also making it.
Getting into the medium of jewelry, it is a difficult market. For one, just the number of people who identify themselves as jewelers and apply to these fine art shows, right? I mean, so did you kind of have to find your way in through that as well?
Yes. I mean, I think that's part of the growth that you have if you are in our industry, so to speak. I think that you need to figure out your own way. Jewelry, of course, is a highly competitive medium, and it's so diluted, unfortunately, which is a curse, but it also allows you or gives you the need to stand out. And I think that highly competitive industry or market or medium really pushed me to create something that's recognizable, has its unique voice, stands out, is, a one-off. It's something very special. So I do like that because of it. But of course, there's many things that influence the jewelry category that are not very likable. Mm-hmm. One positive is definitely that it pushed me to the next level. It always does. I mean, I always want to create something better and greater and more unique. So I think that it gave me opportunity. When you start at a time where this application wasn't around and, you had to mail in your slides and all that kind of stuff, it wasn't really that apparent then. And, we learned by going to art shows, talking to different artists, figuring things out that way. And then there's kind of at one point that's art for a source book came out and about, and it was like, wow, this is a holy grail. So all the art shows, where to apply to and how to do it. Now with the application, I think that's even more complicated, more complex, more competitive for every medium, because now everybody's applying to every show at any given day. And it's if you have 2,000 applications for 200 spots at a top show, that's high competition. It's tough to get in.
Yeah. Would you say that you bring to the jewelry business that you stepped into kind of the learning curve of being an entrepreneur and how to make something that stands out and the kind of the business side of things that helped you find your way into the market?
It definitely did. There's two different things that I think are important for me. One is I'm not traditionally trained, which doesn't give you that tunnel vision. It allows you to think outside the box, I think. So that helped the creativity aspect of it, I think, because I'm not bound by what people say you can or cannot do. Mm-hmm. So creatively, I think that really helps. And from the business point of view, yes, I think that if you have a sense of how you can sell something and, how you can talk to a person, it really does help to sell something. So I think we are in such a multi-tier complex environment where you need to be creative and create unique work. You need to have the time to do that, but then you're also your own salesperson. You clean the shop. So
the job list goes on forever.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if people really would know what's involved, they probably wouldn't enter this business. But
right. Well, you say that coming into it, you don't have the baggage of being traditionally trained, jewelry techniques, but you do have that as a resource and at your disposal in your collaboration with Christiana. So I guess the creative is wide open, but then when it comes to the technical, you guys can kind of lean on each other for that. Yeah.
So jewelry is a very complex medium where many people don't think about it. But, other than creating an attractive object, first of all, there's a lot of technical skill involved in actually doing it. But then on top, you have so many aspects of it. It needs to be weighted correctly. It needs to be aesthetically pleasing. It needs to be comfortable. So if the person wears something, it becomes a whole different ballgame than, I put this on a pedestal or something like that.
Yeah, or on a wall or something.
Yeah,
it's got to be correct. It's got to work into somebody's life. Correct. Going to a special event or whatever. It's got to be a form of self-expression versus, something you show your friends when they come over for dinner.
So this additional complexity is something that a traditional jeweler is much more versed in creating something like this. So initially my work was probably not weighted correctly, or it didn't feel good when you wear it. And so, those things really are something that you either learn the hard way and it takes a long time, or you have somebody that actually tells you how to do it. Christiana is an amazing jeweler, skill level over the top. So having her in this really helped. And initially, of course, I was the helper. I looked over her shoulders. 15 years later, she has physical limitations. Making jewelry takes a toll on you physically. And actually, my injured hand, I can clinch a fist that is tighter than Christiana can with hers. So, there's arthritis.
Because she's got some arthritis going on, right?
Yes. So there's so many aspects of it that kind of wanted to take a step back and gave me the presentation or, put me on the pedestal.
Yeah, you step into the spotlight. And
correct, yes.
I want to talk about your work and talk about your designs. I was, looking on your website, and it sounds like what you describe about your work that's kind of this combination of contemporary methods, combined with traditional technique. What does that mean?
So jewelry making is an ever-evolving industry. And I mean, as you see, you pull out pretty amazing jewelry out of the tomb in old Egypt, and you wonder how people made those, and their craftsmanship is impeccable. But with today's technologies, it's possible to use CAD design, 3D printing, scanning of objects that you can then manipulate further into wearable art. So it would be blind, it wouldn't be the right thing not to explore and incorporate those technologies into the creation of work, because I am a big believer of the end result, not necessarily of the techniques that got you there.
Yeah. If you can get to a place where something has never been seen before, that's the whole thing in this business, is to stand out as unique.
That is correct. So art should not be judged by how it's made. but what the end result looks like and what the effect that it has onto you. Of course, there's crafting involved in making jewelry, which is a category that is not necessarily completely considered art, which I don't agree with, but it is. But we all use tools, a painter uses a brush and, if they're advanced, maybe they do a little bit printing and enhancing and all those kind of things. So there's a lot of things that influence our work these days because of what technology allows us to do. I'm not shy of exploring those.
Okay.
I think that everybody should, if it's in their abilities.
I heard this from somebody. Is this true that Germany is known for the trade of jewelry, that they have some of the best tools? And
I think that craftsmanship in Germany was always a very high valued profession. Every person in Germany used to be very well trained. The European Union kind of loosened the education system a little bit and the requirements to achieve certain levels of craftsmanship. Yes, you're right. In Germany, some of the gemologists and stone setters, and they do great, amazing work that I've never seen anywhere else. It's just amazing how once you put time into something, how you get better. And if you try to strive and create unique work, you really see the journey. And, I've been doing it for 15 years. It's not that long of a journey, but I can really see how it changed the work that I do and the way that I approach things. It's a pretty nice progression. Very interesting.
And every experience you have up until the day you decided to go down the jewelry route, those little bits and pieces also help shape who we are as independent artists and with our work, with our designs, but then also in the overall business. There is no wasted experience when it comes to creating, when it comes to creating what we do, it's all an amalgamation of our life experiences.
No, well put. And that's really what it is. And I think that if the customer relates with that, and that's kind of what we have on art shows, the customer gets to meet us and relates to us, the whole package then ends up being possibly a sale, where they meet the individual, the artist, get a little bit of your experience, a little bit of your personality, and then they get to own something that you created. I think, that's special about our shows and the way that we sell our work. I like to create an aesthetic that is organic, but yet futuristic. So it has this melt of something that looks created by nature, but also is something, somebody can wear and it looks attractive and contemporary and modern. So CAD design initially had a big part when we first started out. It kind of subsided a little bit now. So my statement still talks about that, but I think a combination of computer and traditional making jewelry is what you see when you look at my collections.
Definitely. And also, that influence of nature, you're a scuba diver, right? So you got some of your influences from the sea?
Yeah, that is correct. I actually, at one point in my life, I wanted to make that a profession. I'm
really?
A dive master with the intention to become a dive instructor. And then, kind of life changed and I had different interests, but I spent a lot of time underwater. Scuba diving was a big part of my life. I don't dive anymore. I haven't in a while. I can always refresh it, but I haven't been in a long time. Okay. But the inspirations or the memories, the visuals that I took from that time impact me today. I think it's such a different world, and to really enter a different world, it's nothing that if you never stuck your head underwater on an ocean reef, you are missing out. So all the different shapes, textures, and creatures that I encountered during that time initially worked themselves in the work unconsciously. I didn't really intend to do that as my theme. So the first few pieces that I did with that concept were experimental, but it turns out that people really enjoyed it. And once I had that feedback, I made it my mission to use that as the inspiration for most of the pieces that I do. So I like microorganisms, like viruses. Look at the coronavirus, the image that you see every once in a while. I think it looks so cool.
Yeah, right.
Microorganisms and ocean-inspired creatures is really what the center of my design philosophy.
Well, you work with expensive materials. You're working in gold and jewels. And one thing I would anticipate is a little tricky with the creative process is taking a risk on making a design that you don't know how your collectors are going to respond and having so much money into that piece.
It is something that I don't know it any other way. So it's normal for me that in jewelry or the jewelry that I make, you have a high investment in material. It's just the fact. So I've never been a painter. I've never had the luxury of buying a canvas for, fairly little money. And I know paint can be expensive too, but, overall, it's nothing compared to what you have to stick into a piece of jewelry. It's the uncertainty if somebody is going to like it.
Yeah.
But what I enjoyed, and what I had the privilege really, is that everything that I really put out there was enjoyed. So people did like it. So
the feedback was pretty immediate.
Yeah, correct. Yes, and that allowed me to stick to my philosophy and not deviating from the path to make something commercially interesting.
Yeah,
I can always create something, or at least I was lucky enough that everything that I created found a customer at one point or another.
Well, speaking of commercially interesting, I guess thinking beyond just art shows, every retail center in a city, every mall has got a jewelry store. And so when you have a public where jewelry is readily available, and then to come to a fine art show like that, that's another kind of specialized market or a specialized target of who you're trying to speak to.
It is. And I'm so blessed that exists. Jewelry stores, I'm not a big friend of. Online sales don't really work for me. Social media, something that some people swear by, doesn't work for me. So without art shows, it would be a big problem, really.
Okay.
I think that my customer, too, demographic wise, is kind of, starting in the late 40s and then going upwards. So, the new generations definitely not into jewelry that much, and not in what I create, at least. I think that, there are some young people that are interested in it. To get back to your question, the market is diluted to such an extent that you have all the cheap stuff that or not well made jewelry that you can buy in a mall kiosk, or then you go one level up, you go to a mall store, or those kind of things. But it's all mass produced. It doesn't have the aesthetic, I think, in most cases. I mean, there's beautiful jewelry here and there, but most of it is really for the mass market.
It's not like sculpture for your personal aesthetic or your personal design that somebody would want to make a statement about themselves, what they want to express, as opposed to just like something shiny on their finger,
That's right. Yeah. I mean, it's a totally different customer. And the person that buys Oliver Jewelry's jewelry is really somebody that is confident, is not brand oriented, and wants to express themselves the way they like it. Doesn't matter what their friends say, doesn't matter what their colleagues say, that's them, and they either take it or leave it. It's something special, something unique. It's very fulfilling, I think, if somebody really expresses their personality with things that you create. It's special. And I'm blessed that we have art shows for me to experience that, because otherwise I wouldn't know how to do it.
So everyone knows that working as a jeweler, you have that risk of theft, that risk to safety. And I don't want to out what you do specifically to protect yourselves or to be prepared, but I'm sure that the idea of being robbed, it's always on your mind.
It's a subject that concerns me and that I think about every day. And it's such an unfortunate part of making jewelry. It's something that you can't really prepare for. It happened to so many. I think we are just always very aware. I'm always a prisoner of the art show, so to speak. I mean, I never leave the booth, or very seldomly. I'm always on the lookout for people that might not act or behave the way that they should on an art show. And I actually left an art show just during the show too, packed up the entire thing and we left.
Because of safety?
Yeah, I had such a bad feeling about one individual it looked like they were checking the workout to be taken. And we just packed up and left the show.
So that hypervigilance, I mean, it's like on the one hand, you have to be carefree, not a worry in the world, interact with people, talk and have stories. But then in the back of your mind, you're thinking, is this person playing me? Am I a mark?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like I said, it's very sad that it happens, but it's part of doing business, I guess. But it doesn't influence me that much that it cripples me. But at every given show, we don't socialize much. I spend most of the time, other than small restroom breaks, at the booth. After the show, we hardly ever go out to dinner with friends and make it just about the fact of selling the work. And the socializing comes later.
Yeah.
That is because we want to protect our investment in our work.
And that's smart. I mean, it's something that as a glassblower, I don't ever have to think about. If someone melted down my glass, they're going to get pennies on the dollar, but you melt down your designs. And it's so it's just something that not all of us think about. And I know it's a conversation we've had with other jewelers where safety and it's important. It's a very, very important consideration.
It's very unfortunate that my medium comes with that added, security concern, but I wouldn't change it. I mean, I like what I do. I wouldn't change, anything about it. You just have to be aware. And if you don't feel good about anything, walk away,
Follow those instincts, right? Follow the instincts.
Be smart and safe, and protect yourself before you protect your work.
Well, speaking of the expensive materials, if I understand correctly, don't most jewelers have a much smaller markup on what they're creating than, say, a painter or a glassblower or whatever? Like, you don't have that wiggle room for price negotiation. Is that true?
No, that is true. That is absolutely true. In the markup, especially if you go into the higher grade metals, gold, 18 karat and things like that, I mean, you can't just go crazy in your pricing. So the markup is lower, and I don't like haggling anyways.
Right.
So, I mean, I price the work fair, and it's a leave it or love it situation. Yeah. I mean, most customers really are great and they don't haggle.
Well, I know that we all, as in our medium, we have like someone will say, how long did that take you? And that's usually the kiss of death of them trying to get down to the brass tacks of how much money is in the piece that they're purchasing. But I was in your booth at Ann Arbor this year, and I heard the perfect response from you. You had a customer come in and ask you, how much is the gold worth that's in this piece? And do you remember what your response to them was?
I don't know. Did I say something like this, that you'd pay for design and the material is free? Or
You did. It was so incredible. You're like, tell you what, don't even worry about the cost of gold. I'll throw that in for free if you're willing to pay me what I'm asking for the design of the piece. I mean, that was so choice. That wasn't off-putting. It didn't send them away. They're kind of like, oh, okay, kind of reframe the conversation.
Yeah, it's kind of refreshing that you actually experience the same thing. But in jewelry, unfortunately, your work is judged not only by the creative results that somebody sees in front of them, but also by the value of material that goes into it.
And they have a perceived value too. So if they perceive that they're spending a lot of money on something that has intrinsic value, it heightens the desirability.
Yeah, it does. I mean, in order to actually kind of answer that question, for most people, I always thought they're going to have the do-it-yourself kit, like a piece of metal, a file, and a flamethrower, and here you go, try it yourself.
Pull out a little piece of gold and put it on on top of the thing and say, here you go, here's the $1,000 worth of gold, have at it.
Yeah, exactly. Try, and if your result is not satisfactory, you come back to me and buy this piece.
I love it. Well, Oliver, I can't even believe it's been an entire hour. We've just kept on talking. It was just an easy conversation.
We scratched the surface. There's so much more to talk about.
Well, before we go, I wanted to bring up the fact that you are in Naples, Florida.
That's right.
And Hurricane Ian just came through. Can you tell us what's going on down in Florida?
Speaking of hurdles, right? Hey, yeah. Well, Naples is the windy city now.
Okay. Oh.
I lived here quite some time, and we had, in the last decade now, we have a 5-year frequency. So Irma was the last one, which left the area quite devastated. We actually did the Plaza in Kansas City, the show prior of the hurricane hitting here, and had flights to come down and put shutters up and secure our home.
Yeah. And at first, it looked like it was going up to Tampa, St. Petersburg, so you weren't really in the line of fire.
Absolutely right. So we checked the weather forecast on Sunday evening and see, well, it's going into Tampa, and it doesn't look like we should be concerned whatsoever. So we canceled those flights. And then, of course, Monday morning we check again, and that wind took that easterly turn, heading right for our area, and that's where it ended up. The wind damage didn't seem to be that catastrophic. I actually feel that Irma did a much worse thing here. Nature looked like it was put through a blender. Whereas when we came back here now, 2 weeks after the fact, we still had one show and then came back to Naples. It looked all very cleaned up until you reach the areas where flooding did a number on the houses. And unfortunately, the storm coincided with high tide, so it pushed in a 10-foot high tide into everything that is within, let's say, a mile off the beach. A lot of flooding took place. So when
a mile, I mean, that's hard to even. It's like we talk about this, and then to actually process what a mile inland looks like.
It's incredible. And I mean,
So did that reach all the way to Tamiami Trail on 41?
Yeah. If you see some images there, that was all underwater. That still had 3 feet of water, all across. And 3 feet, you can imagine that runs into the businesses and all the single-story houses down there. So now if you drive through that area, because people had to rip out all their belongings, the drywall, the carpeting, and everything is piled up in front of their houses. So it looks like a war zone. I mean, it looks like a tornado went through there, but it's all man-made and piled up there. It looks devastating. I mean, if you can just imagine the value and that people lost, and then of course the fact that they have to rebuild their lives. It's incredible.
I'm sure the contractors are just flocking to South Florida to get some jobs to fix them.
So on the way down here, we drove I-75 going south, and just what you said. I mean, there's so many individual contractors that you can really see they kind of they piled their equipment up onto the truck and then just headed down here. And so we have that contrast of the contractors going down to Naples. Then we saw all the electric vehicles coming back, the bucket trucks and all that kind of stuff came towards us because they had so much repaired at that point. And then once we were closer to Naples, you had all those vehicles being trucked off that got damaged because they stood underwater for a couple of days, for 3 to 4 feet. So all the cars got damaged too. And we saw those coming towards us.
Well, even things that we wouldn't expect, like we planned on doing this talk a few days ago, and something as simple as the internet connection was just crappy. There was no way we could do this buffered conversation back and forth until we could figure out a way to get a stronger signal. But even something like Wi-Fi was affected down there.
Yeah, and it still is. I think that if you prioritize it, of course, water damage is the biggest one that to the homes and people's houses. The second one, of course, is electricity. So a lot of people were cut off of electricity. But FPL, which is a local power company, did a pretty amazing job getting people back on. I think there's a small percentage that's still 3 weeks after has no power, but overall they did a pretty good job. And then what you said, internet, so telecommunication. I think some of the cell towers got damaged and all those kind of things. So it's quite incredible how fast some of those things are put back into place. But then on the other side, we just, the Ritz-Carlton here, just, not that I can afford to stay there, but they just said that they're going to open back up mid next year.
Okay.
So a major hotel, of course, they are right on the beach, is not able to kind of push their repairs to be done by the end of the year so that they're ready for season.
Right. Just because they want to get it fixed doesn't mean they can just have it happen. That there's going to be a rollout of when things can get fixed.
Yeah. And, I mean, COVID and supply chain issues and all those kind of things play into this too. So, slot materials, they probably can't get that readily and things like that. So that's going to be tough for recovery, and it's going to be a longer process for repairs. But like I said, I mean, this is just another hurdle. I mean, for not necessarily the direct impact and damage that the hurricane did to our own property, but there's a lot of tourists that can come into the area because, like I mentioned, the hotels aren't functional. their snowbirds have to repair their units before they can spend money on other
spend their
things.
money on luxury items, you know.
And we have the Florida season coming up.
Yeah.
And I think that the area might be impacted by it. But
you're not going to go on record as gospel, but I mean that would be the impression, I'm sure, from anyone who's standing down there looking around at what they're seeing.
Yeah, right. I mean, here's my personal take. I'm going to be pessimistic. I think it's not going to be great, but if all my pessimism learned me one lesson, it's going to be the other way around. People are going to flock out to the art shows. They're going to visit the stores, and they're going to spend money because they want to live and enjoy life.
Well, your attitude got you through your trauma, so let's hope that a positive attitude will get people through this one as well.
I hope so. Yeah, I mean, it's very sad, and the impact that it has, I think we're going to have decades of scars that we're going to see here. It really is going to take that long. But overall, I mean, we're a very affluent area here. I think we're going to rebuild and recover quicker than most other areas. So,
well, one last question here as we wrap up. I just wanted to ask you, with everything you've gone through in the past 4 years, all the ups and the downs, do you have any words of wisdom for somebody who might be in a similar position as you, who had the rug pulled out from under them, what they should kind of keep in mind?
I tried to address that earlier in our conversation. I think that the never give up kind of attitude is what's needed. Mm-hmm. There's so many things in life that throws us back, and it seems actually last decade, it accumulates. There is more and more negative and things happening that kind of affect our life. And you can't stick your head in the ground and say, I'm not going to take this anymore, give up. But don't. Mm-hmm. Right. I am so surprised of how, if you allow it to, it turns into something positive. And just keep working on what you're doing and enjoy the process. Don't chase a goal. And I think you will come out happy, strong, satisfied, fulfilled.
Just keep living. Keep living and striving and dreaming.
Right. Yeah. If your mind is, if you have physical issues and your mind is down, build yourself back up. Have a positive outlook for the future. And there's so many things that people are influenced by, but there's always light at the end of the tunnel, and you should run towards it.
Well, I'm going to keep that in mind, because I think by the time this airs, or maybe shortly after, they're going in and they're going to be working on my ankle, and I don't know. I'm going to try and take your advice, Oliver. I'm going to stay positive and hope for better days.
I feel for you, seriously. And I will support you every day. And like I said, if you need anything, I'm here for you.
I will do that. Thanks for this talk. Thanks for everything, Oliver. And I'm just so happy to have this conversation with you. I'm happy for the outcome that you've had with everything you've gone through. And thanks for sharing your very personal traumatic story.
Of course, certainly. I actually, to be quite honest, I was a little disappointed that you never asked me before. I was sad, Doug, we are so close friends. How come you never asked me for an interview? I thought, it's like, am I a black sheep or what?
Nope, it was in the back of my mind, and it was all coming in due time. Yeah. And a lot of these conversations we have, like last episode, we talked with Anthony, and my surgery's coming up, and it just kind of seemed like it was a good time to fit in and just have this talk, because it's so personal to me. This project is so personal, and we go through things at different times, and our experiences are kind of lining up right here, and I thought this would make for a really good talk.
Good. I'm glad it did. I think what you're doing with the podcast is absolutely amazing. It's a great addition to what we need, and I'm glad that I could be part of it. So thanks for making it.
We appreciate you, Oliver. Thanks so much, man. Have a good one.
Sure. Thank you. You too. Talk to you later.
I loved your talk with Oliver Schnoor, Douglas. It was eye-opening. It's funny. There's an element of that kind of trauma that you were talking about on the lead-in. Mm-hmm. That's almost like, we all care for it, our fellows, but there's also a little bit of the, oh my God, you roll the window down and look at the traffic accident. I was like, that was a horrific accident that he got in there with his hand.
But he kept moving forward, and I felt like his message for me, especially what I'm about to undergo here, soon, to know that there are better days ahead, to know that you can keep pushing forward and a positive outcome can come out of a shitty situation. So it was definitely inspirational to me.
I was thinking about your operation. Why don't you get the one done, and then just chop the other one off and go peg leg? Jay McDougal style.
That is Plan B, actually. That's Plan McDougal.
Clan McDougal. All right. Yeah, he'll carve you one. I don't know that he'd be the best one. I'd just do a big old, like, just a one with flames. I want a hot rod one when I go peg leg. This never happens to me. All right, folks. Don't cut your own feet off. Stick with us. We'll be back in a couple more weeks. We have some exciting things planned coming down the pike. I've got some good interviews that I don't want to jinx just yet. So
gotcha. Cool. Well, next episode, we'll be entering a new chapter, a new phase into the podcast, and it's going to be titled Douglas on Painkillers. So,
oh, good. I'll drink some beers.
There you go.
Well, don't get addicted, and keep it on the straight and narrow.
I won't.
They only give you a certain number. You just got to be careful. All right. We'll trust Renee on that.
It's going to keep them. Yep.
All right, brother. Good luck.
All right, man. Thank you. Appreciate it. See you later.
This podcast is brought to you by the National Association of Independent Artists. The website is naiaartists.org.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. That's zapplication.org. And while you're at it, check out Will's website at willarmstrongart.com and my website at sigwithglass.com.
Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to be notified when we release new episodes.